Welcome to Bookish Talk. I'm really excited about today's show. This is the show that encourages bookish reading and empowers inspiring authors. Thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with us today. I'm Paula Shepard, and I am honored to co-host this show with my friend and published author, Devin Galladay. And Devin, we have a new virtual library background. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I can, Paula, and good morning, everybody, wherever you are. The Philological Library is a component of the Rust and Silver Lodges complex in the main campus of the Free University of Berlin. The new library of the Faculty of Philology occupies a site created by uniting 6 of the university's courtyards. Its 4 floors are contained within a naturally ventilated bubble-like enclosure, which is clad in aluminum and glazed panels supported on steel frames with radial geometry, which is pretty amazing. An inner membrane of translucent glass fiber filters the daylight and creates an atmosphere of concentration, which is what we all need when we're writing and reading, while scattered translucent openings allow for views of the sky and glimpses of sunlight. The bookcases are located at the center of each floor with reading desks arranged around the perimeter. A serpentine profile of the floors creates a pattern in which each floor swells or recedes with respect to the one above or below it, generating a sequence of generous light-filled spaces in which to work. Amusingly, the library's cranial form has earned its nickname of its own, the Berlin Brain. Paula? And I think you're muted.
I am. And I'm sad about that because I love libraries so much. And my question for you actually is, do you feel like because of the internet and this idea of the metaverse that libraries are becoming outdated?
I mean, here you're talking to somebody who literally, when we're not in a pandemic, I would go to a library 3-4 times a week. Like, that was my office. It was a free space where, like, if I was in the middle of something and it wasn't going, writing wise, it wasn't going the way that I wanted, I would get up and I would look at books, a lot of books, and a lot of my favorite libraries. I'm sort of like in the Long Beach, Los Angeles area. They almost all have sort of like bookstores. So if I can't just check something out, I will buy something. I love the vibe. It's quiet. It's fantastic. It's, in my humble opinion, way better and more quiet than a coffee shop. So I love libraries. You?
I do too. I feel like there's a big library here in Austin. I'm in Austin, Texas, of course. And there is one downtown and it is absolutely beautiful. And the same thing, it's very quiet. It's a great place to go. I love the fact that I'm surrounded by so much knowledge. And even though I can have that at my fingertips with the internet, it's just not the same as being able to pick up a physical book and sit surrounded by all the goodness and be able to read. It's just a totally different vibe, I feel like.
Well, I'm a book nerd, but I'm a book nerd, like a physical book nerd. I want to hold it in my hands. I want to flip around in it. I want that. There's a certain instant gratification that, that a Kindle kind of device doesn't offer me. But that's not, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, if I didn't have the option to the paper book, the digital book would be great too.
Absolutely. It's the overall vibe. Thanks for sharing that with me. I'm glad I'm not alone in really loving the idea of libraries. And I hope that our viewers, if they haven't been to one in a while, this is your encouragement to go check one out. All right. Well, Devin, in our episode 1 and 2, you shared 10 reasons why reading is important and also 5 reasons why writing is paramount. So if you haven't had the opportunity to watch those really enlightening episodes, we encourage you to check them out on demand at E360 TV. But today we're actually going to show you how to come up with the best book title for your book. Before we get started, let's start with why you need an empowering book title. We've all heard the famous saying, don't judge a book by its cover. But while this is a welcome warning against rash judgment, writers and book publishers actually do need to know how to title a book in order to hook potential readers and boost sales. So your book titles are the first thing a potential reader sees, and they should hook your target audience and convey a little bit about the plot and the tone of your book. A good title is going to generate interest and really intrigue readers without giving away too much of the plot. So your title might seem secondary to the story, but the perfect book title can actually make a novel or a nonfiction book that much more memorable in the minds of readers. Devin, what are the 3 most common attributes of good titles?
So before I get to that, I just want to make it really clear. If you're a new writer and you're just getting started, pick what I would call, and everybody else would call, a working title. Just get something. It doesn't have to be great. Sometimes you have to write not a great first draft in order to have a brilliant second or third draft. So just make sure that you have some sort of a working title that will inspire you enough to keep going. And then maybe something more genius will come up later, and that's fine. But here's some of the basics. Good titles have certain traits in common. It can be useful to write down a list of titles of some of your favorite books and think about what makes them work as titles. Things that inspire you. Some of the characteristics that good titles share are they're short. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite books of all time, The Princess Bride, is a 3-word title, which is sort of classic. Short title is easy to remember, and oftentimes it can be more powerful than longer potential titles. Be evocative. In other words, best-selling titles make us feel something and contain compelling wordplay and imagery. Novel titles are a small showcase for your ability as a writer, so it's important to come up with a great title that will show potential readers a bit of your writing skill. And by the way, this is true of anything you write. Something that is going to grab the reader's attention is paramount. And be memorable and unique. A good book title should make us remember it and make us curious to know more. In other words, if we're not getting past the title, nobody's reading your foreword or your introduction or chapter 1. So make it easily identifiable, and unforgettable.
How can we apply this? How did you apply this when you titled your book?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I had like 10 different working titles. You know, ultimately I came up with the title 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes, that alludes to the travel that I had done. Obviously, My Dead Father's Ashes is hopefully something that is evocative, especially if you've had a loved one move on to the next sphere or whatever's next. And so for me, it was something that slowly came. But when it came, there was this lightning bolt moment where I was literally driving and I had to pull over, and I ended up writing the book title on my palm with a pen. And the pen didn't work initially, so I was shaking it and writing really hard under my hand until it came out. And so, you know, that's what I ended up having to do. Like, so I think it's really important, as I was saying earlier, to have something just so it will keep you moving forward, right? You just want to keep writing. You want to keep doing the thing to the next level. And, you know, I think my initial book title was called My Pal Dad, which, by the way, everybody loathed, you know, when I told people. And so I just had to keep going until there was something that rang in my ears, like, oh, this is truthful, it's honest, it's evocative, it is not brief at all. But, you know, sometimes we break the rules. I knew what the rule was, and that's why My Pal Dad was sort of like the running joke, because it was really short. But I had to run with something ultimately that really kind of fed me as an author, and hopefully it does others as well.
Sounds like an evolution and not something that you did right off the bat. It was an idea that evolved into a really powerful title.
Well, and by the way, this is sort of like something that's really important for writing as a whole, is that, and I mentioned it earlier, is that you are going to write, at least many people do, a terrible first draft. A first draft isn't about, I've just written it down and it goes to print. That doesn't happen for anybody. So what you do is you get your thoughts and ideas down, you get all the stuff, you spit it all out. And then what the second draft does is it starts filling in the gaps, because those initial thoughts really may not cover the depth of the kinds of things that you want to say. So you just keep, you keep writing it out. As a matter of fact, I think Hemingway is, and I'm paraphrasing here, Hemingway was famous for saying that you have to write out all the garbage. I think he used expletives instead of garbage, the way I am now. But you keep writing, so all the stuff that you don't need gets to be out there, and then you just get to edit, delete, do whatever you need to do until your complete story, whatever it is that you're trying to convey, your message, is out in full.
I'm so excited and intrigued about everything that's to come through the rest of this episode, just from what you've even said and shared about your experience. So thank you for sharing that with us and the common attributes too of good titles. So later on in the show, we're going to chat with our authors and publishers about 4 things to consider when you're titling a book, and also 4 tips for coming up with your best book title. So when we come back from break, we are going to discuss with Dr. Larry White Sr., author, founder, and CEO of Signature Entrepreneurs and Masterminds, his new book, Operating in Excellence, Pain, Purpose, and Position. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Brian Tracy once said that optimism is the one quality most associated with success and happiness more than any other. Courage, enlightenment, and power.
Hi, I'm Monica McGurk, author of Dark Hope. I chose the title Dark Hope for this story, in part, of course, because the main character's name is Hope, but even more importantly, as a reference to the term dark horse, which alludes to a person of inconsequence who, against all odds, rises to prominence and is successful in something that is really, really difficult and challenging for them to perform. And for me, that kind of epitomizes the story of Hope and how she rises into this very momentous fight against time and against biblical prophecy, and hopefully to success, as we'll find out in the later books. For more about me and my book, Dark Hope, please visit monicamcgurk.com.
Maya Angelou stated, "That life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. Encourage, enlighten, empower."
Welcome back to Bookish Talk. I'm honored to have with me my co-host, Lynda Sunshine West, founder of Action Takers Publishing. Lynda and I are enlightening our bookish writers on choosing good titles for their books. I mentioned some common traits like short, evocative, memorable, and unique. What has been your experience in choosing titles, Lynda?
Yeah, thanks for this question, Devin. It's interesting for me. Titles actually come to me, and I believe that God sends them to me. I'm usually awakened around 3 a.m. with an idea, and I just like wake up and I start dumping it on the paper, like you were talking about that, that dirty draft, right? When you're writing, this happens to me with titles. And it's been very interesting because the titles that have come, of course, because I believe they do come from God, that they have been ones that have resonated with people. Like they're like, oh my God, I love that title. And so that tells me that I'm on the right track with that. So I'm going more from, the heart space. I'm not really thinking about, what is the SEO thinking? I'm just, coming up with titles that come from that heart space more and what I believe are sent to me. Now, with that said, that doesn't happen for everybody. This is what happens for me. So with my clients, though, we have to look at, some of the titles that come up aren't really something that's going to attract a lot of people. So I go in there and we do some SEO searching to find out what are the keywords that people are looking up, because we really want our books to, hop to the top of the search bars. So there's actually a strategy that's involved with it more than, just my heart, like mine, like they come to me, I have to use them because they came, but not everybody has that ability to do that. So it really is, there's strategy involved or not, So I don't know if there's any right way to do it. I think, here's the bottom line: write your book and publish it. Write your book and publish it. Only 3% of people who ever write their book ever publish it. So don't worry about the title if you're not going to publish it. That's my thought.
I think that is sage advice, Lynda. Paula, we have another empowering guest on the show, Dr. Larry White Sr., author of the book, Operating in Excellence, Pain, Purpose, and Position. Paula, can you share his bio with our bookish readers and writers?
Absolutely. When I was reading this bio before we started here, I got so excited. So it is an honor to introduce to you Dr. Larry White Sr. He is an award-winning entrepreneur, a Navy veteran, a brand ambassador, business coach, best-selling author, talk show host, and CEO and founder of VIP Events, Concierge LLC. Dr. White recently spearheaded an event to provide toys to disadvantaged youth in the Baltimore metropolitan area, which is my hometown. Mr. White has been the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2012 NAACP's President's Award and the 2014 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dream Keepers Award. So welcome, Dr. White, to Bookish, and thank you for your service. Before we share the book, Operating in Excellence, Pain, Purpose, and Position, tell us a little bit about your Martin Luther King Jr. Dream Keepers Award.
Wow. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me today on this fantastic Friday. Well, that Dream Keepers Award, as I shared with Sabrina and Daryl prior to the show, is very prestigious. You have to typically be a senator, a congressman to receive that award. That is the highest award by the NAACP, just under a Lifetime Achievement Award. So sitting there on the podium with Senator Barbara Mikulski, you probably remember her from Baltimore. She's an icon here. And it was just amazing that they recognized me for my humanitarian style, my volunteering, in shelters and things of that nature. So I didn't see it coming. I was pretty humiliated when they called me and told me I was selected. And just a quick little joke, a few years after receiving the award, I was sitting at the same dinner some years forward, and one of the recipients goes, "Hey, have you seen our daughter? She's receiving this award tonight." Not the same one I got. And they put the past recipients of all the awards, and they looked in the program and they saw it was me. And they're like, wow, it must be nice, for you to win top honors. And my mom was still living at the time, and she had an opportunity to see that. So it was really, I'm still on cloud nine from that honor.
Dr. White, I love, you are a rock star. So we're grateful that you're here with us. Our mission at Bookish is to encourage, enlighten, empower our readers and writers to begin the journey to write their legacy story. Can you share what inspired you to title your book Operating in Excellence, Pain, Purpose, and Position, and how was your book a form of healing and growth for you personally and in business?
Well, that's an excellent question. So I had just finished my first book, The Ultimate Network and Entrepreneur, and literally that was my thesis, the first book. And I just come out of a divorce, and I was a single parent, and I struggled in my 20s and in my 30s, and then in my 40s it started turning around. I remarried, and I always had this dream. My mom, you guys always talk about the library. So I would say, Mom, I'm going to the library. And she goes, Larry, there's no berries in the library. I loved going to the library growing up as a kid. So I take this trip to Martha's Vineyard in my 40s. And I had tasted a lot of success, but not like the second book, Operating in Excellence. So my mom passed, and it was a low point for me. I went into depression. She died tragically, and so it really was a tough time. At the end of the day, I wanted to show people how you could lose a loved one and still operate in excellence. So that's where the title came from, Operating in Excellence, after my mom passed away. So that was the pain portion. The subtitle is Pain, Purpose, and Position. So that pain of losing my mom led me to my purpose, which was being a bestseller author 2 times. And it put me in a position to not only just write 1 book, 2 books, but now I'm a 5-time bestselling author through Amazon. So that pain that led me to my purpose was to really network hard and go out to these networking events and then write this second book, which is my favorite, by the way. Daryl said, well, which one do you want to feature today? Because I've got this #1 book here now. You guys talk about titles. I love this one too. But at the end of the day, Operating in Excellence is a short read, but it's very, very powerful. I've gotten so many reviews and conversations. Hey, this was inspiring. And so to end it up with this great question, Operating in Excellence, I want to show folks you can still live a great life even after you lose your loved ones. This is how you can do business and operate in excellence, be a good spouse, be a good father, be a good grandfather. But it takes some pain. Everybody's going to go through it, but it'll lead you to your purpose if you follow it. And that position for me is entrepreneurship, empowerment, inspiration, and leadership.
Wow, what an inspiring story. It's just amazing to understand that through pain we can actually empower ourselves. So Dr. White, your book is only 34 pages, and within those pages...
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Hello, can you hear me?
A little bit. I could hear everybody else very well, but your volume is not coming in very good.
Okay, I'm sorry about it. Can you hear me better now?
Okay. Yeah, Devin is saying the same thing. You're coming in really low. I do apologize.
Well, let me go ahead and go with the question there. And so, thanks, Marie. Yeah, it is a little difficult to hear you here. So, Dr. White, first of all, thank you so much for being here. And wow, what an honor, to have you, but the accolades that you have, experienced. Your book is only 34 pages, right? 34 pages. We talk about there's novels out there that are hundreds and hundreds of pages. And within those 34 simple pages, you uncover your personal pain, your purpose, and your passion. And so I would love for you to share a brief story with us that will empower our bookish readers to begin their journey of writing their legacy story.
Oh, absolutely. I love all these questions, and they're just for authors. I was on tour with a lot of celebrities, Stacey Lattisaw, Johnny Gill, Charlie Wilson. I've worked with some of the major entertainers in the business. I also have a limousine service here in the Baltimore area. So I got a chance to go on tour with them, and some of those tours will be book signings. And just some of the small things, like a sign-in sheet, having the books already pre-ordered and things. I saw a lot of things that went wrong. And I never thought myself of being a author or a writer. I never even consider myself even today a writer. I'm a very good storyteller, okay? And so I saw a lot of things went wrong, and I said, hey, everybody has a story. I forget who said it. And you just, I believe in coming up with my title first. I teach, I'm a published, certified book publisher. So I teach classes on how to write, self-publish. And so I always encourage my soon-to-be authors, everybody should write a book, everybody has a story. But I come up with my title first, and then I come up with my chapters. I have to write to the book. So chapter 1 blends into 2, 3, 4. And so that's what I do. But being on tour, I just saw so many things. And it wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to wake up one morning in my 20s and my 30s and write a book. But it was being on tour, doing events that allowed me to say, I have a story too. But I don't want to make money off of books. I want to empower people. So I got my first book out, and it went number 1 on Amazon, best release. And I was like, that's it. That's it. And then little birdie says, no, there's more. So I wrote this Operating in Excellence book. And let me tell you, it is 34 pages. And I just talked to an author the other day. It's so powerful. It just talks about what season are you in? Right? Sometimes when you're in a dry season, that's a waiting season for you. And so I took a lot of time writing that one, even though it's a short read, because I wanted to be impactful in people's homes. All of my books are for the entire family. Males can read it, females can read it, children can read it. So soft reads, but it really will take what do you feel inside that you don't think you can accomplish and make it happen. So yeah, it's really good. I remember seeing my first book being shipped by UPS to my front door, and I just ran to the door like, this is mine. I got my own ISBN number, my ICCN number. And, it's just a really good feeling to be out and do speaking engagements and empower people. And there was an 86-year-old lady on my first tour, Deposit Your Dreams into Success. And she says, Mr. White, I just want to tell you your book is really inspiring me. I have another book out. It's called When Men Lean In, We All Win. I wrote that during the tragic murder of George Floyd in Minnesota. And that book is being shipped off to prisons, and it's helping African-American males understand their purpose that have been wrongfully accused of going to jail for different things that they didn't commit. So I'm just one of those folks that kind of like Marvin Gaye, he wrote what was going on. He sung about what was going on during his time, and so whatever's kind of going on in the world at that time that I can personally relate to, that's typically what I write about. And this operating in excellence, all of you all should have a copy in your home.
Awesome. I love that. And there was so many different elements of what you talked about there. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to cover it all. But there is, one thing that I would like to ask you this question is, if you were giving yourself sound advice, your younger self, what would the topic be that what would you talk to yourself as a mentor or a coach?
Well, just get started early and don't quit. When I was a senior in high school, I quit my basketball team for various reasons, but I won't go into the time. And a lot of times when you quit something, you keep on quitting. You never finish. And I just would tell people, if you have a burning desire to get something done, you don't have to worry about if people tell you you're not good enough. You are good enough, all right? Being the best version of you. So I would get started early and just follow your dreams and your passion. I'll leave you all with 3 words: dream, desire, and determination. And those are the 3 things that really get us going. And every time I wake up in the morning, I'm dreaming. I have the desire to make that dream come into fruition. And then you have to have the determination to follow through. So that's what I would tell everyone that's looking for things.
I love that. And what I love about that is a dream, because we wake up every day, right, having dreamt at night. So we're already starting the day off every single day, being able to do that. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. We truly appreciate you, what you're doing, getting your books out there. And like I mentioned at the first segment, is that, there's so many people who write books but never publish them. Well, Dr. White published his first. He thought he was done, and he is nowhere near done. He knows that this is like a trail that he's going to be going on. So everybody, get yourself out there. You encourage, enlighten, empower. Like, that's what his books are all about. Go purchase his books. And we're looking forward to seeing you at the next segment when we bring on, I don't remember what we're going to be talking about, but just tune in for the next segment.
Okay. I will have.
The great Nelson Mandela once quoted, "The greatest glory in life is not never falling, but in rising every time we fall." Empower, encourage, enlighten.
You get a title, and you get a title, and you all get a title, but they're not that good. Hey guys, Noor here, and here's how to title your book. Let's get started! New writers have a tendency to want to come up with a book title before their book is finished. I used to be one of those writers.
I wish I could use different colors to describe my setting, but I already locked myself into the title 400 Tones of Brown.
New writers love bragging using their new titles, but it doesn't help your story. You want a title that fits and enhances the atmosphere of your book, not one that restricts you. Your title should complement your book, not your book complementing your title. Now I typically save my title till after I've finished writing a full manuscript. You could also choose a title that represents your book's central idea. This is especially good for horror novels. Example, The House by the River, or Whispers After Midnight. You could even go with your main character's name for a creepy effect, or a non-creepy effect depending on your book's intended tone. For instance, Carrie or Lolita.
What's the title? What's the title?
Calm down, take a deep breath. It'll come to you. Ask friends to read your book and think of some title ideas. Make sure your title reflects the story one way or another. I like titles that summarize or even symbolize major plot points and hint at things my reader will later discover when reading my book. There you have it, how to title your book. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my others and subscribe. And remember, Noor for President!
Ralph Waldo Emerson stated, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Encourage, enlighten, empower."
Hello, we're back. Devin, it's all you.
Welcome back to Bookish Talk. We have covered how to come up with the best book title for your book and the three most common attributes of good titles. Let's take it a step further and discuss some of the pitfalls in choosing titles. These are, by the way, debatable. If you fall in love with something, you have to run with it. But what makes things more difficult, and the logic is going to become clear in a second, is that one-word titles. There are many best-selling titles that have only one word, but in the age of online search engines, it's important to consider the consequences of choosing a one-word title. When typing a one-word title into a search engine, a potential reader will pull up a list of many results that have nothing to do with your book. This is particularly true if you are a new writer just starting out. I don't think Stephen King has this problem. I don't think Nora Roberts has this problem, but most of us probably have to consider it. So consider expanding one-word titles to a three-word title or even a four-word title to make the search more specific to your book. Existing titles. It's important to make sure you are choosing an original title that hasn't already been used by another book. There are exceptions to this rule. However, it's just something to be aware of. In other words, there is a classic that I'm going to show you here. The Catcher in the Rye. Here is my dog-eared copy, the classic by Salinger. There is also a book called The Catcher in the Rye, written by the very weak-hitting baseball catcher Bob Uecker. And he's doing it in sort of like an ironic and funny way. So it's his sort of like homage and his takeaway that he's sort of using this title in a second way. But that being said, make sure you search a working title of a new book on search engines to ensure that it hasn't been already used. Also, consider genre. Think about what genre you're working within and come up with something that will clarify the subject so the reader knows what they're getting in your book. A thriller will have a different sort of title than, say, a fantasy novel. Your book's title should have a similar flavor, perhaps, with other books within the same genre. And here's a tricky one. Inadvertent references. An important factor to consider when titling your book is making sure that the title of your book doesn't lead to misunderstandings or unintended controversial topics, unless, of course, that's what your chief aim is. One thing that I've known people to do is to make sure that they read their book aloud, to hear it. In other words, sometimes the idea in your head doesn't match the words that are actually coming out, and you might hear an inflection or something that may be misused when that's not your intended purpose. So successful book marketing requires a great title that won't make readers associate the title of your book with a controversial topic or group. At the end of the day, it's your book. Just be aware of some of the pitfalls. Lynda, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, first of all, that thought of the single word, one of my books is called Momentum, and really, who's going to type that into a search engine? So as I mentioned earlier, the book titles, they aren't always going to be something that we do search, to see what's going to be a catchy title, because sometimes we're going to be driven by a different force. But if you are looking for that title that people are going to be searching for, search engine optimization, you really want to make sure that it's something that people are actually searching for. So I love that. And it can be really, really tough to find that right title. And you could be sitting there like, oh my God, this is the best title ever. And then nobody gets it, right? But just keep, working on it to find something that works for you as well as your reader. Because what are they going to read, based on the title of it? Like you mentioned, The Catcher in the Rye. And like that, to me, it's like, I don't understand the title, but it is a very well-known book, right? So it had legs behind it, probably not based on the title. And this was pre-internet also. So things have changed. Like Devin said, they've changed a lot. So here's some things that you might want to consider, when generating ideas for your new book, for your book title. And that is, the character names, as was mentioned a little bit earlier. But consider naming your book after that main character, or maybe another important character in the book. Are there characters in your book that, with unique or evocative names? Have you made up some crazy names like Harry Potter was mentioned earlier? So these character names, they can provide a simple, novel that grabs the reader's attention to help them to see, oh, this is something I need to pick up and at least look at it. Because the idea behind the title, as well as the image on the book, the book cover design, is to catch their eye so that they look further. That's your job on that, is to capture their eye to look further. So now what about the setting? Think about where and when your book is set. Is there a period time setting? Is it, is it in Antarctica, which I talk about Antarctica a lot because I've never been there. And I think that would be such a fascinating place to go. But, so a book, right, might be interesting about Antarctica. I don't know where the setting is there. But playing on the setting in your story title can also help to generate, possible titles that would interest the readers. Like maybe it's, snow skiing in Antarctica. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. As you can tell, I'm not a title comer-upper. So here's one. Okay, now this one, I'm not sure about this one, but, Love in the Time of Cholera. It's a well-known book title that immediately establishes that time period and tone. Would it interest me? Probably not, but it's interested many, many people because it's very popular, right? And then literary devices. Many attention-grabbing, nonfiction titles and fiction titles use literary devices to spice it up, right? You might consider using alliteration like Gone Girl or double entendre to produce a catchy title that hooks a reader's interest. So think about, like, there's books out there that, they have like MMM, like all the words are MMM in it. Right? That's an alliteration. That's creating something that kind of rolls off the tongue and it sounds really cool. It's spicing it up when people say it. And then originality. So consider, what separates your book from other books and try to incorporate that into your title ideas. Try to incorporate that into your title ideas. And don't steal what they're doing, like that one guy did. But, just try to incorporate it. And then the perfect title should clue the reader into what makes your book special and separates it from others. The Secret. Oh my gosh. Have you read The Secret or watched the movie? I have too many times. Not enough times. But for example, it's intriguing. What is the secret? What is it all about? But here's the thing. Again, I'm going to always go back to this, is write your story and put it out there, publish it, get it out into the world. The story that's inside the book is more important than anything, because your story is going to change somebody's life. You need to get that story out there. So it's, I love, just writing. And I know that, the doctor earlier mentioned that I'm not a writer, but, he's becoming a writer. And that was me too, Devin. Have you always been a writer?
No, I mean, honestly, when I was, and this is a true story, when I was in the 3rd grade, I remember writing a little biography or something, turning it into the teacher, and no joke, true story. Like, I hope they don't do this anymore. The teacher then turned it back, gave it back to me, and literally said to me, you need to take a lot of woodshop classes. You're never going to be a writer. I was 8 or 9 years old. And at the time, it was really traumatizing. And to be quite frank with you, I took a lot of woodshop classes. I can fix everything in the house. And my wife loves that about me. And then I had a crush on a girl like years ago. And because she was taking writing classes, and I had always like secretly written like, oh, I'm not a writer, but I will scribble these things down on a napkin or something like that. And I threw them in a big shoebox and hid them away because I wasn't a writer. And then eventually what evolved in me was I started taking some writing classes and talking, because I loved books and I loved storytelling. And I came from a family of storytellers, and it was something that was in me. It was always in me. I was just afraid. And I allowed the fears and somebody else's opinion to dictate who I was. And that is this is obviously, we're talking about much more life stuff here, more than book writing. But, I'm imagining there's somebody who's watching right now who has a sense of fear about whether or not they can sit down and write. And you've mentioned the same thing. Was there for you, Lynda, a certain turning point where all of a sudden it was like, okay, I'm going to give it a try anyway?
Yes, it was my mentor. I grew up saying, I'm not a writer. I just said that for decades until about, I think it was age 51. I have a mentor, and his name is Greg Reed. I will mention him, throughout these segments, because he has literally changed the way I see myself. And he was writing a book called Footsteps of the Fearless. And during that year, it was 2015, I was actually breaking through a fear every single day that year, 365 days in a row, breaking through a fear. Well, during that year, he said, hey, you should be in this book called Footsteps of the Fearless, because you're breaking through a fear every day. So it's perfect. And I was terrified. Put my words on paper. I can't write. Well, fortunately, they had a ghostwriter. So I just had to talk to the ghostwriter, and then ghostwriter turned my chapter into something. And then what happened after that year, after I was done facing a fear every single day, my mentor said, that's cool. You faced a fear every day, but what are you going to do about it? And I said, what do you mean? I think that's plenty. I don't need to do any more. And you have to write a book about it. Who breaks through a fear every day for an entire year? Who does something like that? You got to tell your story, because there are a lot of people out there who are fearful. They don't know how to move forward to take that next step. And your book is going to inspire them, and it's going to motivate them to take action. And so I started it for a year. What I discovered is that I've been a starter my whole life. So you were mentioning about, the writing to the wood shop, right? For me, I had been a starter my whole life, not really a finisher. So I finally, decided to put pen to paper and to finish the book. And somebody taught me a system that I could, write the book and finish it in a week. And I did. So The Year of Fears is the book that I published. And oh my God, I was terrified to put it out there. The point here that we're both making is that there are a lot of people out there who don't believe in themselves. I myself was one of those for many, many decades, but we don't have to live in that disbelief about ourselves. It's time to write your story, put it on paper. And this is always going to be my thing. Put it on paper and push it out there, because it will impact people's lives. So make sure you do that. Get started and finish. Now, here, when we come back from the break, we're going to share our book recommendations. I'm super excited about today's segment today, because I'm always excited about everything. So we'll see you in a bit.
Famous inventor Thomas
Thomas Edison stated, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." Encourage, enlighten, empower.
An enlightening quote by Albert Einstein: "Strive not to be a success, but to be of value." Encourage, enlighten, empower.
We're back.
We are in fact back yet again. So this is our Bookish Club segment where our co-hosts share our personal book recommendations with the mission of encouraging our viewers to expand reading genres by adding variety to your own reading list. And even if you're not a reader, this might be a great opportunity for you to grab a fantastic book that may in fact change your life in a whole variety of ways. And so it's a wonderful thing. So I'm glad that you're sticking with us. And what I would, I think Mirielle is not with us. She has some technical issues. So, why don't you get us started, Lynda, and tell us what you've got going on for this week?
Yes, I love this segment because something you mentioned, Devin, is that even if you're not a reader, now I have never been a reader. So not only was I not a writer, I was not a reader either until I got into the personal development industry. I started working on myself. In 2014, I hired a life coach. I was 51 years old before I even started my life. I like to say I'm a 7-year-old right now, because that's really when my life started. Well, this Bluefishing book, this is one of the books that I read that really helped me, not only personally, but also with my business. Bluefishing, The Art of Making Things Happen with Steve Sims. Steve Sims is a gentleman who has done some really kind of crazy, incredible things that people are like, how the heck did you do that? So he started off as a bricklayer, when he was a kid, and this is what his family was. They were all bricklayers. He grew up in England, and he somehow figured out that there was a way for him to get a job doing something, working at a bar, I think it was. And he ended up creating the secret code. Like we have those speakeasies where you go up to a speakeasy and you have to whisper the secret code in order to get in. Well, he thought that would be a really fun way to get private clients to come into the bar because they were losing business. And this all led to this ability for him to connect with amazing, incredible people who, including like Elton John, Elon Musk, Andrea Bocelli. He's really connected with these incredible people. And what he does is he helps his clients experience doing things with those incredible people. So it's all through this book here. It literally lays out every step to take to move into, not to do exactly what he's doing, but like there's a book out there, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is a great way of seeing that, but in a practical sense of different things that he did that you can completely see yourself moving into that space. So I love this book, hands down. I mean, every book I'm going to mention during these bookish segments here, I love absolutely hands down. Steve is a great friend of mine, and I don't love this book because he's a friend of mine. I love this book because it has changed my way of thinking. It has changed my way of approaching my business. It's changed my, my connections with people, everything. So I highly recommend Bluefishing by Steve Sims. Can you tell I love it, Devin?
Yeah, no, I can totally get that you love it. So okay, you've so far described yourself as not a writer, and so you're a writer and a publisher, and not a reader, and you've just talked about how this book has changed your life. Has that changed in terms of your readering? I'm just making up words. I hope you don't mind.
I like it. Oh yeah, not at all. That's what this is all about, right? Books are about making up words. Well, it's interesting. There was a friend of mine, her name was Kathy, and back in 8th grade, and Kathy would always have those Harlequin romance books, and I would always look at her like, oh, she's interesting. Like that was what I thought, or back then I thought she was weird, right? And she would come up with these really random words. And I remember one day we were walking around, she goes, I'm famished. And I was like, what is that? What is famished? It's a word I found in the Harlequin romance, And so it was interesting because I admired her love for books and her love for fantasy and her love for escaping. But I just am not that person, So for me, when I did read Harry Potter, which I loved that series of books, incredible. But I'm more of the personal development. So when I discovered personal development, which wasn't until 51, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stop reading, because every time I would read one of these books, I was growing. So for me, it's more about the personal growth that I'm going to make than it is about, disappearing into the fantasy life and stuff like that. So, to answer your question, I absolutely changed the way, what I read, especially, because I used to read magazines like People magazine, gossip. I'm not into that anymore, So it's completely changed the way I am about books and the publishing. It's really interesting that I moved into that because, I was never into writing. I was into bringing people together to share their story. But I found that the more I bring people together to share their story, the more I share my story, whether it's on stages or it's, in books. And so, it can really change your life. And I don't think I've ever been as on fire about life as I am now that I've, moved into this space. So everything has changed for me. To answer your question, did you want like, yes, that's the answer.
Yeah, no, I think you did wonderfully. This is just kind of an observation, perhaps, is that, when you talked about self-improvement and books on that topic, as a culture, as a society, there's certain things we have tended to shy away from, just in conversation, right? Like, oh, those are personal things. I don't want to be too vulnerable in front of you. Really, the first place where we started having conversations was through books, because you could quietly alone read a topic, a subject that maybe you wouldn't discuss with your friends, but you could interact with the words on a page and still have the conversation. You could still sort of know that somebody was having your kinds of feelings, but you didn't have to kind of like risk your vulnerability by communicating with another person aloud. You didn't have to do that. Now, as a society, we're slowly getting better at that, but for sure it's a process. And I think it all started with books. Like, there have been, for me anyway, and I still have to get to my book. Yes. But one of the things that was really compelling for me was to read something and go, oh, that's me. They're telling my story. They may not be the same gender as me or lived in the same time as me, or maybe not even had the same things in common as me. But what they did have was they had an experience that was true for me. And that truth is the thing that speaks to me. And I mean, I think that's what, since the Guggenheim Bible, I think now we have this experience where we keep becoming more within our culture in sort of bringing us more unity, which I think is incredible.
I love how you share that, Devin, because really, several things are coming to mind, but, I'll share one idea. Yeah. Is that, that right there shows how powerful it is to share our story. Because as you stated there, as you're reading somebody's book, you're like, oh, I relate to that. And so what this is doing is this is giving those of us, like I've had many, many doubts about myself. And I'm sure that third grade teacher, gave you some doubts, right? So I've had so many doubts about myself, but reading other people's story and saying, I relate to that. What does that do? That tells me that I'm not alone. Right. So sharing our stories is so powerful. It's so powerful. So we don't have time to talk about all of that. Right. So let's talk about your book, Devin, your book, The Liars Club. Never heard of it. Mary Karr.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So The Liars Club was written by Mary Karr. Not surprisingly, I have a story to go with this, but The Liars Club is remarkable in the sense that it was really sort of the first time somebody that you didn't know, somebody who wasn't famous, who didn't have, or wasn't infamous, who had penned a story that was, not only was it compelling, beautifully written, but it captured the hearts and imaginations of the readers. So nobody cared that Mary Karr, at least at the time, wasn't famous. She was just this sort of, I mean, she was a teacher. I think she's at Syracuse University. I could be wrong about that, but I know that she's a professor in New York. And she was mostly, I mean, she put out some poetry books. As you might imagine, even though poetry is a spectacular art form, it's not on the top of everybody's lists of things to do. So she was kind of in relative obscurity. And then she wrote this book called The Liars Club. And so where I come into it, when we're talking about Mrs. Jones, my third grade teacher, she'd probably be about 170 at this point in time, right? But so I before I did Bookish, I was an assistant film editor for Miramax. Yes, that Miramax. And one of the editors, and a guy by the name of Greg Featherman, who's a great editor, has been around for years. I was working on a show with him, and we would talk about the books we were reading, because while I was not the book writer, I was in fact a book reader, and we would throw each other books. Now, the book that he gave me was dog-eared and deeply read, and literally I read it and tore it to pieces. And there was something about this book, The Liars Club, that let me know you didn't have to be famous to tell your truth, that you didn't have to be some sort of celebrity in order to get this done. And she wrote beautifully, and she told the truth. And I just want to read, I think maybe from this is from her 10th anniversary edition, in part of the introduction. And it's just the first paragraph. Not long before my mother died, the tile guy redoing her kitchen pried from the wall a tile with a uniquely unlikely round hole in it. He sat back on his knees and held the tile up so the sun through the aged yellow curtain seemed to pierce the hole like a laser. He winked at my sister Licia and me before turning to my gray-haired mother, now bent over her copy of Marcus Aurelius and a bowl of sinus-opening chili, and he quipped, "Now, Miss Karr, this looks like a bullet hole." It's a great, remarkable story that talks about addiction, dysfunctional families, sadness, becoming a hero, and then ultimately mourning the loss of the people you love, which can be really intense. And it was something that when I was reading it, there were, I don't necessarily have much in common with Mary Karr, but it was something that was really brilliant, inspiring, filled my heart with joy and love. I mean, I know all of this sounds a little bit silly, but it was really what happened for me. And anyway, it's a remarkable book. I think you'll love it, and I think you should absolutely read it. And I think that's probably what we've got for this week. So I want to thank you for joining us on Bookish Talk. We hope that something we said encouraged, enlightened, and empowered you to begin your journey to write your legacy book. Be sure to join our Bookish Club and begin the journey to journal. Tune in next week, and we will share some more tips on how to begin your writing story and what is a collaboration. Visit our website at thrivingwomen.com and subscribe. Please leave a question or comment in our live chat, and you never know, it may be the topic of one of our books this week. Lynda, thank you so much for being here. Always a pleasure, and it's great talking books with you.
You too, and I think we coordinated our colors today. Yeah,
we totally did.
Totally on accident. Looking forward to next week and the future episodes. And if you're enjoying this, please make sure that you invite people to watch it, because we're going to be coming up with many, many topics as we go. And we look forward to seeing you on the big screen.
Choice and opportunity, the foundation of the Capital Choice mission. We believe everyone has the choice to take control of their own financial independence. And we want to give more people the opportunity to achieve their goals. At Capital Choice, we help make financial wellness a reality. And you can be a critical part of the charge, a part of something bigger. Our associates are more than just salespeople to us. We're a team. a family that supports each other, and we have fun doing it. We want you to succeed. So we offer mentorship and training to help you get comfortable with the industry and serving clients. Our goal is to get you to a place of independence, to be in business for yourself. You choose how to grow, and we'll never take that away from you. Your business focus, how you build your team, how you serve clients, how high you climb, full-time versus part-time. The sky's the limit, and we'll be there for help and support along the way. At Capital Choice, we are passionate, empathetic, real. We give everyone equal opportunity, but you have the control and make the decisions. Want to see what you can achieve with more choice and opportunity? Join our team and find freedom with Capital Choice. Your business, your choice.